Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and the Vampire Coast is in a bit of a weird spot. This is because they weren't an official army. They had a small supplement in White Dwarf and that's pretty much it. Which meant that when creating the Vampire Coast, Creative Assembly really had to be, well, creative. It worked out great for Warhammer 2 being one of the best DLCs that we've ever had, but they've not really gone up to snuff when it comes to Warhammer 3, and it's unlikely that we're going to get future DLC for it. I could be proven wrong, but it does look like they're moving towards the other stuff. Thankfully, however, there are mods that come into effect, which will be able to fill out the roster a little bit and provide that support that we've been hoping for when it comes to the Vampire Coast. This is Gunfire of the Abyss, which is a fairly new mod that adds in 29 new units, a bunch of different things, including ships. Yes, you're not going to get the typical naval battles that you're kind of expecting. Don't think that it's just going to be a new type of battle. But no, ships flying around, you've got a bunch of units that are going to be able to provide that heavy fire support that many people have been wanting for the Vampire Coast. You've also got some extra monsters, some deep ones, a little bit of everything, honestly. And we're going to talk about all that because it affects you not only for custom battles, but also for Campaign 2, including a new Lord choice, a hero choice, and a legendary hero, something that the Vampire Coast is actually missing. I've been fairly impressed with it, been playing my own campaign, and yeah, it does make the Vampire Coast feel a lot better. So, let's just jump right in because we need to talk about a bunch of stuff. Obviously, keep in mind when it comes to stuff like this, you're going to have to start a brand new campaign, but you have a bunch of new units which you'll have access to from the start too. Some of your characters will also begin with some of the new stuff. The main thing here is it's all spread out very nicely between tier 1 all the way up to tier 5. And when it comes to your special characters, you know, the ones with the pseudo hordes, yes, you'll also be able to recruit units from there too, so don't you worry about that. So, whilst you're on the move and, you know, plundering, being a vampire, and trying to establish as many coves as possible, yes, you have access to those units, and it's going to make your campaign a lot more fun. As we all know, the Vampire Coast has kind of fallen behind in terms of power. So we have a brand new generic Lord choice that you'll have from the very start of your campaign. This is called the Fleet Commander, and essentially it's there just in case you want to have mortal lords when you're playing as Aranessa, which in most cases you'd want to because theming is quite important. You do have a bunch of mortal units that you'll have access to, including Slayer Pirates and just a few other things there. The character is pretty decent, actually. You can get it to either work on moving around fairly quickly and being quite good at administration, or you can also have it focus around buffing up your living troops. Though if you focus on the administration, you will get a lot of extra cash, as it does have faction-wide bonuses towards your ports. There's also special abilities, which kind of act as like the whole Warhammer 3 special ability situation, but you'll have to unlock those. Overall, yeah, if you're wanting to play as Aranessa and you want to really have some more mortals, this works out so much better. It's a lot of theming, which is really, really important when it comes to, well, a character that really shouldn't be in the Vampire Coast, let's be honest. There's also a brand new generic hero choice known as the Seafaring Butcher. You can find it in the tab with the Damned Paladins. It's a pretty interesting one. Obviously, it's using like the whole undead ogre skeleton, and essentially what this guy does is he's a monster buffer. There's loads and loads of monsters with the Vampire Coast. You have a fair amount of them in vanilla, and this mod adds in a fair amount more. So the idea is being able to use a character to make them a little bit better. Buffer characters are always very welcome. A lot of people love them when they come in through DLC, and when they come in through mods too, they're very, very useful. It's melee focused too, so it'll be up there with your monsters doing quite a decent amount of damage, and yeah, performs very well. There's also a legendary hero which everyone, as far as I'm aware, has access to from the very beginning of the campaign. I checked out the 3 vampire characters, well, undead characters, and they all have access to the quest, and yep, all you have to do is go to Nuha, which is in Estalia, and you'll be able to pick her up. She is a Necrophex Colossus, meaning that you have access to a heavy character there, who is also able to, well, make your campaign a lot more interesting, because to go buy her unique skill line, you have to pick up the first one, which is going to make a lot of factions hate you, but after that, you'll be able to get some faction-wide bonuses towards your magic, which is obviously very, very good, and at the end of the skill line itself, she's going to dramatically buff up the Necrophex Colossus faction-wide too. She does have also a pretty good unique trait which reduces the upkeep for the Necrofex Colossus. At the end of the day, if you're playing, say, Noctilus, who does use these quite heavily, you can beeline fairly quickly, occupy that settlement and then abandon it when you don't need it, and there you have a brand new legendary hero which is going to help your faction do quite a number on Orph 1. Now, if you're wondering about all the unique ships that were shown before, the ones that are specific to each of the characters, you'll have to progress through the main story. Go through the song lyrics, get up to the third, and that's when you'll pick them up. They're very, very strong, so yeah, you are limited, but it kind of makes sense for that too. You'll only be able to have one per character as far as I'm aware, but yeah, they're absolutely incredible. You can see them on screen right now. The styling is just awesome, right? So each of the unique ships is unique looking, as you can expect, and they all kind of center across the lore of each specific character. For example, Noctilus has his castle, which he took away from Sylvania when he finally left his bloodline, and Renessa has more of a traditional style ship with a bunch of ogre man-eaters. They are very, very powerful. Think of them as much better than Queen Bess, for example, and they do a lot of damage, obviously some better than the others because they've got some long range or whatever, but overall, absolutely amazing. The quality of this mod has been shown tenfold just with these additions. To give you an idea on how powerful these ships can be, I'm not doing my end of video battle showcase with these units because, yeah, the Noctilus ship is amazing. Here's when I was testing out a little battle to potentially have at the end there, and it was basically demolishing that Vampire Count army before it even got there. Sure, it's going to get into combat, but by that point, most of it has been demolished. Most of the big stuff has actually been removed. I think I got really lucky and it basically one-shot a unit of Hex Wraiths, which is absolutely insane. We'll go briefly over some of the standard units. For example, you do have these big boys over here. These are the Kraken Storm Knights, which are going to work very similar to that of the Chaos Aspiring Champions. They're pretty good, nothing too bad about them, and they're very good at melee. They do have a bound vortex also, which is going to make them very, very good if you're fighting against hordes. Since you're going to most likely be in Lustria or near around that, you're going to be dealing with hordes. And there's some more higher tier range units, like for example the Lamprey Fangs and the Bounty Hunters, which are half-naked pirate ladies. I mean, who doesn't want that, right? This means that you've got some higher tier units because when it comes to range, you get the zombies and then you start moving on to the weapons teams. Now you can switch around. The Bounty Hunters work very well with Aranessa, so you've got some pretty decent range there with 180 range. It all depends on what you want from your playstyle, but it's giving you the options, and I think stuff like this, when it's adding loads of things in, options are always useful. It's the same thing with DLCs. The more options, the better, especially as you start looking towards all the races which are kind of lacking at the moment. But we do have some other stuff to talk about. For example, a bunch of different types of ships. These will come in with various different stylings. The first one being just Tide Knights, which are pretty much Doom Knights, but they can't fly. They're just kind of moving over ocean, and it's kind of cool. Demolition ships are exactly what you expect them to be, but yeah, they're so much better than the current one. The Vampire Coast has a current Hulk, which has very little HP, so it dies before it actually gets to go in to do damage, whereas the demolition ships, they move very, very quickly, and they provide a very big boom. They're also fairly durable too, which makes them much better and much more survivable. You're not going to want a full army of them, and that's for sure, because they'll die out as soon as they hit something, but this is when we start looking towards the actual other ships too. You've got a variety of different ships that are going to work like chariots. Think of this as the land ships, but just undeadified, where one of them is very good at jumping into melee, very similar to that, or when it's actually using parts of the Sunneshi chariots too, so you can see what it exactly does. And the other two come in with their own styling, where one's got a flame cannon, the other one's got cannons. It comes in groups of 4. All of them have some gunners on top, so you're going to be firing constantly. Again, think about using some weaker versions of the land ship, but coming in groups, and it just feels really, really good. So essentially what you have here is some fast-moving artillery. They are pretty weak, so they can be bogged down and killed off, but the idea here is to actually give you something a little bit different. And the fact that it's moving ships, I mean, it's really, really interesting, honestly. The damage output is very, very good on all of them. Obviously, you've got better ones with like the longer range, where the flame cannons do very well, but they have to get close because they've only got 80 range. And then you've got the melee version, which you'll want to wait. Obviously, you want your army to catch up together and so on, but the damage output is very, very good again. This is more or less how I always envisioned the Vampire Coast, making use of constructs and stuff like flying ships to make it as unique as possible, to differentiate them more from the vampire counts who have access to some range, and obviously the Tomb Kings. Naturally, this isn't a lore-friendly mod because Vampire Coast lore is so entirely limited that we don't know what exactly Creative Assembly or Games Workshop, but he had said, would have had planned in the future if the Vampire Coast would have been a full army, but it's very, very cool. There's a bunch of awesome monsters coming into effect also, like for example, you've got giant sea turtles, which are also going to have some cannons attached to them, being able to do some decent damage. There is a awesome looking crab. I'm saying awesome a lot, but it's just because they look really, really cool. It's a very smart thing to reuse assets and then just change them around. You've got some deep ones too, which I love. I mean, I've been playing a lot of WoW recently. I'm not sure if you guys have seen, but there's monsters which are very, very similar. There's also Sea Elemental, something that is discussed in the lore, but it's never really touched upon a lot. There is the Rotting Prometheans, but also in a styling of a kind of war shrine-ish, actually. It's pretty interesting, and it does support you if you're going to be using a lot of magic. And the big thing that everyone would probably be talking about the most is actually the fact that we have the gigantic sea kraken. The kraken itself is really, really cool. Weird, but very, very cool. I'm not sure how easy it would have been to create that. There's the Abyssal Dragon Knights too, but they don't fly, by the way. They're just always on foot. I'm not sure if that's intended. Overall, I mean, more monsters, more fishies. Who doesn't want that? This is what I want. I want big fishies. Sea Krakens are actually a thing in lore. They existed from Manowar, so it's nice to see them implemented here. Alright, so we're going to talk about the mod. There's a bunch of new units mixed in with the old, and we're fighting against a randomly generated vampire count army. The battle is actually very, very short. There is a massive issue with vanilla. This isn't a mod issue, by the way, which still hasn't been resolved, and that's when characters like Lords, for example, will easily charge into the enemy lines and therefore die before the rest of the army gets there. That being said, I've been playing around with an Noctis campaign and I've been having a lot of fun with this mod. It's definitely something that you're going to want to check out. If you've been avoiding, and I know a lot of you have been avoiding the Vampire Coast for a while now, get yourself this mod. Have a lot of fun with the Vampire Coast. Get lots of big booms. You can see here that I'm bringing a lot of ships in to do some damage, flanked in with quite a lot of zombie pirates just to kind of have some support there. Yeah, there's no complaints. I don't think I even casted magic at all, even though I only had Spirit Leech. I don't think I casted the spells whatsoever, because I was just focusing on just damage, and you can just see the output of all the ships, because it's basically having, each unit there is, what, 4 ships? You're basically having 4 mini land ships firing out, not only with their cannons, but also with their crews. It's really satisfying to watch. It does make you a Terror of the Seas if that's what you've been wanting, especially if you're going for those lore-friendly playthroughs where you're going to have a lot of units into the oceans, taking as many coves as possible. Or if you're empire building, it works very well. I've been starting off one with Lufa Harkin, and it turned out to be quite fun. Really, I live for mods like this because it's just so out of the blue. I wasn't really expecting something like this, and the Vampire Coast has been in desperate need of some help for some time now, so it's good to see this happening. Creative Assembly will likely fix up the Vampire Coast in terms of like a rework or something in the future, but I don't know, again, if a DLC is entirely possible, so seeing these types of mods come in will always supplement where we're not getting it officially, and that, I think, is a big push to why you should be trying out mods. You can find a link in the description below. Try it out. Honestly, you're going to have a lot of fun. Keep in mind it does also need an English translation mod, but that is listed there on the description also of the mod page. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of discussion. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.
At once! Soon! At your service! Come the red mob! Ah!